and self-forgetfulness. The passing of Mrs. Stanhope made it possible for me to put into operation the long-desired plan of retiring a little way into the country, not too far from the seductions of the club in the city, but far enough to conform to the tastes of a country gentleman who likes to whistle to his dogs, putter over his roses, and meditate in a comfortable library with the poets and philosophers of his fancy. Here, with my good housekeeper, Prudence, a name I chose in preference to her mother's selection, Elizabeth, and my gardener and man of affairs, Malachi, I lived for a number of years at peace with the world and perfectly satisfied with myself. Although I was dangerously over 40, and my hair, which had been impressively dark, was conspicuously gray in spots, my figure was good, my dress correct, and my mirror told me that I was still in a position to be in the matrimonial running if I tried. I mention these trifling physical details merely to save my modesty the humiliation and annoyance of referring to them in future, and to prepossess the gentle reader wherever the sex makes it highly important. I do not deny that in certain moments of loneliness which come to us, widowers and bachelors alike, I had the impulse to tempt again the matrimonial fortune, and counting on my financial standing, together with other attractions, I ran over the eligible ladies of my acquaintance. But one was a little too old, and another was a good deal too flighty. One was too fond of society, and another did not like dogs. A fifth spoiled her chances by an unwomanly ignorance of horticulture, and a sixth perished miserably after returning to me one of my most cherished books, with the leaves dog-eared and the binding cracked. For I hold with the greatest philosophers that she who maltreats a book will never make a good wife. And so the years slipped cozily and cheerily by, while I grew more contented with my environment and less envious of my married friends. And whenever temporary melancholy overtook me, I moved into the club for a month, or slipped across the water, finding in the change of scene immediate relief from the monotony of widowerhood. In thus fortifying myself against the wiles of woman, I was much abetted by my good Prudence, who never ceased her exhortations as to the sinister designs of her sex, and who had ready word of discouragement for any possible candidate who might be in the line of succession. "I see that Roger's woman walking by the house today, Mr. John," she would begin, "and I see her turning her nose up at the new paint on the arbor." I selected that color myself. "It's queer how that woman does give herself airs, considerin' everybody knows that she's been ready for 10 years to take the fust man that asks her." Prudence knew that I had escorted the elderly Miss Rogers to the theater only the week before, and had commented pleasantly on the elegance of her figure. But the slight put upon my eye for color was too much. Wily Prudence. Or a day or two after I had rendered an act of neighborly kindness to the bereaved Mrs. Stebbins, she would say quite casually, "I don't want to utter one word agin the poor and afflicted, Mr. John, but when the widder Stebbins hit Cleo with a broom today, I own I boiled over. I shouldn't tell you if it weren't my duty." Cleopatra was my favorite cocker spaniel, and any fair impression my fair neighbor may have made on my unguarded heart was immediately dispelled. Thus subtly and vigilantly my housekeeper kept the outer gates of the citadel, and shooed away a possible mistress as effectually as she dispersed the predatory hens from the garden patch. But with the younger generation of women, good Prudence was less cautious. Any maiden under the very early 20s she regarded fair material for my friendly offices, and frequently she visited me with expressions commendatory of good conduct. "I likes to see you with the children, Mr. John. Bless 'em, sir. And they do all seem to be so fond of you. There's nothing that keeps the heart so young and fresh as going with young people. Just as nothing ages a man so much as having a lot of widders and designing old maids about. Of course," she added, with a return of her natural suspicion, "you are old enough to be father to the whole bunch, which keeps people from talking." Whether it was Prudence's approbation or my own inclination, I cannot say, but it soon came about that I was on paternally familiar terms with the entire neighborhood of maidens of reasonably tender years, and a very important factor in young feminine councils. These artful creatures knew exactly when their favorite roses were in bloom, exactly when the cherries back of the house were ripe, exactly when it was time to go to town for another theater party, to give a picnic up the river, or a small